Good morning, everybody. Thank you for participating. I will read the CVs of the participants of this panel. Nicolas Ridley is an agronomist, graduated in 1999 from the Rosario University, an expert in grain crops in the Buenos Aires University. He worked together with Daniel Canova in advice on crops. He has worked on his own for 14 years now, and now he works as technology advisor in MSU. The other presenter has a postgraduate of corn and wheat in 1993, and since 1994 he is member of the R&D department in Dow AgroSciences. He had 30 years experience in developing herbicides, crops, and fallow. And I wanted to tell you that this presentation, this talk starts in the REM program, which is the knowledge network of pests in Aapresid. The Enlist technology has already been launched. Most of us know about it, but we want to talk about some threats or challenges and opportunities for improvement of this technology. Doubts that appear regarding production is go straight into the point in order not to lose or not to underestimate this technology. This would be our focus. Rafa and Nikos, I will call you Rafa and Nico because we have met many years ago. Most of us are aware of Enlist, but in order to start from scratch, what is the Enlist technology? Enlist is a herbicide, it's an event. Is it a system? Is it something simpler? What is it? Good morning, everybody. First, I want to thank the REM program in Aapresid for inviting me to share this panel. It's a pleasure to be with Nico. This is not a panel, it's an exchange, it's a discussion. Your question, Martin, is interesting because it's real. It's real to come down to sometimes Enlist is a technology, it's an event, it's a herbicide. The concept is broader, it's more integral. This technology is a weed control system based in a comprehensive program that combines three components. The objective is to propose and offer growers a technology that offers an effective weed control that are sustainable. And here we introduce this concept of resistance control. This technology should be viable. This technology could be adopted by a 20-hectare grower or a company that owns 50,000 hectares. This is a product for the whole agricultural community in Argentina. It's not only a seed, it is tolerant to 2,4-D herbicide. It proposes resistant control so that technology is sustainable. The three pillars become a solution through the virtues that the 2,4-D molecule has. We were able to offer this as a very effective tool to control weeds, but overcoming any risk regarding the risk of drift because of the steam or because of the wind. So it is a molecular complex that includes 3 genes that modify proteins that detoxify glufosinate and glyphosate. And the third pillar is a sort of umbrella that includes control programs and good agricultural practices management in order to have an effective weed control. So it is not only buying the bag and applying it 3 or 4 times. No, by no means. I think that from that point of view, the response is the opposite, exactly. This technology proposes exactly the opposite from the point of view of control programs and resistant management. The resistant process that occur in environments where the same things are done year after year, this becomes worse. This technology proposes not repetitive applications as glyphosate was in the past, and as Martin said, I apply 4 times through 4D. This proposes control programs, the solution of what I have just said. Otherwise, we would come to a more complex situation. We need to use control programs, and this means using or adopting alternate application of simultaneous blends on the problematic weed, and so alternate simultaneous blends, and in the next one to change the mode of actions. That would be an effective and robust control program. These are the keys for technologies which would delay resistance. We won't ever stop them forever, but the challenge here is to delay them. This is what Enlist brought, not only using 2,4-D, but also alternate control programs and modes of action. In the control programs means becoming aware of resistance management. What is resistant management? I think that the long-term resistance management is far more than controlling weeds. Probably this was the first question. Shall I control 3 times with the same herbicides? A long-term strategy means focusing in delaying resistance, cutting the seed flow, the resistant seed flow from one generation to the other. The management becomes effective when I combine modes of actions, different modes of actions, chemical diversity with agronomical diversity through rotation. So to summarize, if I look at the short term, I can apply 2 or 3 times 2,4-D, and the soybean won't die. You can say you can use you can have an effective program control if you use pre-emergence and post-emergence products. You are talking about robustness. This is about technological events that offers a proven tolerance to 2,4-D and glufosinate application in post-emergence. There is a slide that talks about a control program. This red line is a control program. The essence is to work as of the planting period with residual herbicides. Any residual herbicides that provides chemical diversity enriches these systems and makes it more sustainable in time. Biotechnological innovation as a second generation of platforms at Enlist won't be here before 2032 or 2034. Today somebody talk about IP. This will be a decision of the industry. But meanwhile, in the meantime, this is the control program, and we have to be aware of different modes of actions between planting periods and different modes of actions in post-emergence. So we are taking care of the back-to-back application and a spontaneous individual, for instance, amaranthus or pigweed, that if we use PPO herbicides in a repeated manner, and so we have a weed that is resistant to PPO, if we don't repeat the application post-emergence, this individual will be resistant in the whole population, and it will confer the resistance to the rest of the population because it transfers this to the resistant alleles. And the same could happen with 2,4-D or with glufosinate, back to back. This is the virtue of our control program. You have to put the money, you have to make the investment to do this. How you make that decision. Good morning for the invitation. As a grower, this is one more tool. This is a useful tool. In the case of pigweed, this is a very useful tool, very helpful tool. Regarding the Colex D technology, what I mean here is that as farmers, we use different formulations of 2,4-D. Each formulation has its own advantage. With the frost that we have had, we are using esters with a good penetration. We have to use sometimes 3, 4, or more products, so we use mixtures with good compatibility. And in post-emergence for soybean or corn, the problem is volatility. This product, the strength of this point is the lack of volatility with droplets, with small drops. Sometimes it's cumbersome to having different formulations, but we need to understand that each formulation has an ideal use at different times of the year, and it can be adopted by large or small farmers. If we apply non-volatile products in summer, that can be a problem. So this product has no volatility, and its effectiveness has been proven. It gives you assurance. And in other countries, we are using many technologies as the dicamba, and it is a very good resort because there's no volatility in the products. Sometimes you might think that an active ingredient can be more volatile or less volatile, but it's not only that. It has to do with the formulation. In this case, the combination is very useful for post-emergent applications. When you have a strong pigweed pressure, having the possibility to apply 2,4-D in post-emergence is very effective, and this has been proven. We use this mostly in soybean as a second crop, and this advances the wheat planting, and the harvest will be perfect, and there's no rain for a week or 10 years. The soybean grows perfectly, but the pigweed also grows perfectly. And in many cases with plots with pigweed, we had observed an increase. So in those cases is where we most use our technology. In those cases, we need an Enlist soybean. Otherwise, you won't be able to overcome this problem. So this is a very helpful tool in order to enable a good soybean crop, because if you have the pigweed, you will have problems. Rafa, we are used to 2,4 or 2,4-D. In the old label, we had 300 or 500, but now we have 2 liters or 2.5 liters. Is it because you want to sell more 2,4-D or because you made some tests or trials? Why those rates we weren't used to? The old labels of 2,4-D that started in the 70s ranged from 100 to 350. Enlist technology has been developed to control resistant weeds, summer weeds. Therefore, we need to adjust what is the equivalent, the correct acid equivalent that we need to take into account. So we can adjust the rates to prevent resistance. The rates is 1.5 to 2.5 liters per label with the Enlist technology. They are not that high if we compare this with another technology that competes with Enlist in Argentina. The extent, the proposal was 560 grams of acid in dicamba. We need to take into account carryover with 2,4-D. The range is okay. This product does not persist in the soil. So it leaves for an open rotation, and the rate is considering there is a chart. This is an interesting picture. The picture in the right is spraying with the Collex D, and the one in the left with a traditional formulation. See the difference in the drop size. This is the attribute regarding the droplets. When I try to answer your question, I want to point out this chart, this graph, was given to me by Martín Belayud in order to understand concepts and resistance. Here we have 2 Gauss curves. The one in the left, that curve, X is the rate increase. When you developed a molecule, you adjust the rate so that you make sure that the control is above 95%. The curve in the left, the arrow says maximum herbicide rate. It is outside the frequency of individuals of the weed that I eliminate with a maximum rate. When I go to the right, I move the arrow of the herbicide rate, and I have a frequency of individuals that remain alive. In the peak of the Gauss curve, I'm eliminated 50% of individuals, and if I increase the doses, I will eliminate the complete population, at least when I start analysis. If there is a previous resistant mutations, the rate would have been much higher. I can have a mutation or resistance process to be corrected. But if we talk ex ante, we have started with this. The correct rate here is the one that we see in the graph in the left. Sometimes the market takes products and manages the cost, so they go to the graph in the right, where the frequency is 1.05 or 2% of survivors. These are individuals that have partial resistance, so after several generations they can recombinate and they can become a single individual, and so they develop metabolic resistance. First, in general, in post-emergence applications, we need clethodim and any other post-emergence. We are mostly trying to increase the rate, and also the word rate is relative. It depends on different things. In late applications with big or tall pigweeds, the rate that comes to the plant is lower. This is just a comment. What Rafael is explaining is with a specific size of weed. Sometimes size is not enough, because it happened that pigweeds that start in December can be eliminated right away, and other smaller pigweeds with nodes already there are more difficult to remove. But not only that, it depends on us to assess, to evaluate the situation. It is small, but it has nodes, so we need a stronger rate. Or sometimes they are higher in size or taller in size, but you need a smaller rate because it is sort of soft and they will die right away. So we have to decide on what the rate is. It has to do with the environmental situation, how long it will take. It is interesting to point out it is not only considering what are the individual's weeds, but also we need to consider whether I have to combine with other herbicides and what the rate is.
Great. The question was why that D.4D dose. This is a theoretical framework that helps us understand why we should not use subdoses, because it opens up the door to metabolic resistance processes. We're training athletes so that metabolic resistance starts with the MOA and goes to other MOAs. And of course, a theoretical result may always be variable. We already have more resistant individuals in our population. This is what the curve shows. But if we also apply the product in the wrong way, we will be generating this process more frequently. We emphasize this because this applies not only to this D dose in pigweed, but also other residuals. It's very important to use the right dose because there is a reason for that. To answer your question, Martin, I can show this, which is a survey we have carried out over 7 years. We have carried out different tests. This is a response dose to pigweed amaranthus. This is around 32 tests exploring over 7 years. The size is 5 to 15 centimeters. Control percentages at 28 days. And the first cloud of dots is 1, 2, and the last cloud is 2.5. As the dose goes up, It is more consistent, the dots are less scattered, and only after 900 grams of acid equivalent we get to 93-95% of Amaranthus control. This justifies Corteva's recommendation not to use subdoses. Over the last 2 years, I've been asked questions related to this. I've been using Enlist. I'm not getting good results. I still have resistance, and they were applying 300 grams of acid equivalent, and this was outside the recommendation. There is a reason for that dose. It's going back to your question. And if a farmer says, instead of 2 liters, I'm going to use 1 liter and 2 liters of glyphosate, is that right or wrong? The ratio we explored, I've been using Enlist since 2009, and since Amaranthus got into Argentina, in Vicuña, and then it extended to other areas, the Argentinian version, which is our native species, which is the hybrid species, the glufosinate-only performance. Glufosinate is a key tool in the Enlist program because it contributes with a different mode of action. Well, it is included in this graph with boxes. It is divided into 2 quadrants. The quadrant on the right, the third box, the purple box, the violet box, 85%. Glufosinate, only at 360 grams of active, provides 61.5% of control. Then we have the other one, which is glufosinate plus D-Colex D. That's a recommendation. Glufosinate is key. It adds a lot in terms of Coniza, Amaranthus, pigweed, but the good thing lies in the mix of both products. You may have addition or not, but they always add up to more. Do you use mixes only or a mix? In this case, in soybean, we use it alone, but in more complicated situations. Well, in that case, glufosinate helps a lot. Obviously, we do not use 2 liters of glufosinate and 1 of Enlist because it's too expensive. What are the differences you see in Enlist and non-Enlist soybean? In terms of weed control, yield, and any other variable you may consider to decide whether to use Enlist or not. Well, in Enlist soybean, the alternative is not good. It works when soybean is young and pigweed is young, but only there. It's a technology that you can use, but the timing is very specific. With Enlist, you have that advantage because you can rest assured that you can apply it 1 week later, but you add glufosinate and you can do it anyway. And sometimes with glyphosate, with grass species, the triple mix 2+2+2 helps a lot. We use it on its own and combined with glyphosate or glypho and glufosinate. Our first option is glyphosate, and our second option is glyphosate and glufosinate. The mix is amazing in key weeds, and glyphosate there also provides control for some secondary weeds that are not included in the 2,4-point-D spectrum. For example, chamico. And this really provides good results. In terms of yield, well, 46E20 is still further up. We started very well with the first Enlist varieties. Today, we have the second generation of Enlist varieties, and we're closer to Intacta. So shortly, we will be at a tie or even further up. Intacta improvement was stopped at a wonderful variety, while Enlist is still improving. So in 1, 2, or 3 years' time, we should have a better variety. But if you have a serious pigweed problem, it is worse to use that mix and spending a lot. Today, if you have a pigweed problem, you have to use Enlist. With Enlist, you also have to pay quite a lot per hectare. So if you do not have pigweed problem, you will not say, I'm going to use Enlist just in case, because it's going to be expensive. If you have a problem, to use it. But if you don't use it. You require a more detailed knowledge about your lot, but we only use Enlist when we have problems. And in terms of insect controlling events and stacking, do you also consider whether you have an old Intacta that's still working well, or what do you do? Well, it is great to have Intacta because it's difficult to reach the right timing with Valigera. With Enlist, well, if you have been using Intacta, you may have forgotten about the bollworm. With Enlist, we had to apply it for bollworm, but we didn't have to do this with Intacta. It would be great to have bollworm control. They were testing this new way of capturing values in technology. Apparently, it's working quite well. So here you see good and bad things. If it contributes value, if it's recovering value, then new technologies will come up. First, we'll have this with D4 2.4, and then we will see other new technologies. What number can you give us? Well, first, a brief comment about what Nico said about the yield gap between a variety that is 2% up in potential genetic vis-a-vis the other varieties. That's true. In only one season, we are seeing that they are at a tie, but in high-pressure situations, we have measured up to 1,200 or 1,300 kilos difference because of wheat competition rate. Medium-low pressure with good water availability in the critical time, the impact is lower and maybe 2 quintals. Now, if you add lack of rainfall at the right time, then you may see differences of up to 1,200 kilos. So that's when you have to think about the value of the technology. It's not that you will get 1,200 kilos more. The technology gives you the opportunity to maximize yield for every variety, for every genetic breeding, minimizing the weed-crop interaction. That's important. Under high, complicated weeds pressure, there's a big difference. Even if you say, I have a genetic seed that's 1 or 2% below the ones we see in the market. Now, Corteva's strategy for Argentina and considering the positioning and adoption of Intacta technology in Argentina was clearly adopted to be used with Lepidopterus in the north and central and northern area of Argentina. Going down to the south, Intacta varieties were used because of their potential yield, not because they were intacta. Everything is dynamic, everything changes. We cannot tell where we will have the next wheat challenges, but in insects, things change too. The problem with Ratiplusia is that it does not prevent Corteva from discussing this, since the adoption of protection to the lepidopterus in the central and northern part of the country, Conquista from groups 5 to 8 upward is being used there. The doors are not closed. We're seeing and discussing not only within Corteva but also with GDM. We're discussing the possibility of doing stacking and going to group 4 great technology so that it's used in more temperate areas. This takes quite a long time. It cannot be done overnight, but it is a possibility, and we will go towards that path if bollworm becomes a challenge. These technologies are much more flexible than wheat technologies. HT, tolerance to herbicide technologies, if they are well managed, they last longer. We have 1 generation per species per year. So what are we seeing looking forward? New BT variety, but in Corteva we will see new proteins that have different modes of action because they are not coming from BT, from Bacillus. They come from other parts. So we will have more stability to Lepidopterus protection technologies, but this is not a promise in terms of time because I cannot make that promise, and I cannot promise that we will have the Group 4 Enlist stacked with Conquista in a year time. It's a possibility, but not a promise. It's like Millet. There are no dates. I start with the questions from the audience. You talk about 2,4-D. You talked about volatility. Is that what you were talking about? I was talking about volatility and drift. We know that Deriva's capacity is larger, and once it's applied, product volatility may expand once it's applied, while with Colex D, there is a salt, not an ester, so there is reduced volatility. The formulation has less Deriva 2.
Pregunto, digamos, el evento para 2,4-D, pero sí notamos una mejor performance respecto a problemas de deriva, digamos, con
claro,
esta
exactamente.
formulación.
O sea,
¿No se puede volver a la presentación para un slide que va a explicar claramente esto?
la soja es
Perfecto.
tolerante a 2,4-D, cualquiera sea su formulación. El riesgo de aplicar en posemergencia un producto volátil es importante, digamos, podemos tener problemas con vecinos y demás, con lo cual es importante, así como por eso hice la aclaración, hay formulaciones que tienen ventajas en otros momentos, en lo que es posemergencia con las temperaturas de verano altas, es importante tener baja deriva.
Quiero aprovechar, porque me da el espacio con el comentario de Nico, te robo 30 segundos, hacer una aclaración. Cuando hablamos de los
When we talk about the attributes of target, the green light of Enlist technology that were approved by the EPA and SENASA are the attributes of the choline sol, zero volatility, and the Colex D technology, that is a formulation that increases the droplet size and reduce the physical drift per droplets. That's why, together with the effect of 2,4-D in pigweed, the choice is Enlist. When we talk about volatility of the drift, there are two kinds of drift. One is the droplet physical drift resulting from the wind. The technology can be DMA. The other off-target path is volatility, which is the passage to the vapor or steam phase. That property is called volatility, and the relative comparison is measuring the steam pressure. The 2,4-D is not a very volatile product. What it is important to take into account formulation stability by temperature, the balance ratio when we dilute salt, real ratio and an balance ratio results. It is important to measure the volatility of herbicides. Those that are formulated at salt are a function of stability of salt. So this is the property of the quaternary or choline salt, which is stable at low water temperature. In the de-associated part, I have an ion of low volatility. If I compare this to the cation of DMA, when we talk about the physical drift per droplet, are the components of the COL-XD formulation. When we compare formulations, this is the work of Matias Aapresid, part of our Corteva agronomics team. He planted our soybean in a cross-sectional way, and with 15 kilometers of wind, he applied 3 meters wide plots with amine salt, microemulsion, and decampment. The bars above the line, the white line, shows us where the symptoms in the soybean were. We can see what was the effect of the COL-XD, then the amine salt, and finally the microemulsion. The microemulsion goes further. Dicamba moves all the time, but when we compare formulations, some have some advantages and others have other advantages. I think that the attribute of COL-XD is that this has been approved by the regulatory agencies because the drift and volatility attributes are really met. Talking about performance or efficacy, all 2,4-D formulation, as long as they are of good quality, the control will be the same with the same gram equivalent amount. I have one last question regarding the mixture. Enlist mixture or blend with different glyphosate formulations and with graminicide, or how you go about the Enlist mixture with graminicide or herbicides. Our this technology has originally been developed. It was developed as a technological event. The idea was to have a robust event in terms of tolerance. At the same time, the herbicide solution results or comes from the discovery of the quaternary salt, choline salt, that has no volatility, to be blended with DMA and glyphosate. In the market, we have the potassium salts and monoammonium salts. Colex D attributes, apart from the glyphosate salt, are kept up to a minimum of 60 liters. When you go below that, those attributes are lost. From the point of view of the 10 mix, combining with different glyphosate salts, they are compatible with EPA salt, but with monoammonium salt, you need minimum a volume of 85 liters of water. Otherwise, phase separation can occur. US applies 90% of post-emergence Enlist with another technology because they have to meet regulatory requirements. They use a product that is called Enlist 1, which is exactly the same as the Colex D. And most of them are potassium salts, and there's no compatibility problems because Americans work with 38 gallons per hectare, 140 liters. So the problem is that we need to take into account the water volume when we are with potassium and monoammonium rates, at least 85 liters. With corn post-emergence or soybean, Enlist soybean, probably we have to remain in the safe side. We mostly use it with DMA, having the sprayer, using a sprayer with the 80 or 85 liters is not very viable. 80 liters is too much. It's very difficult for us. We have had some problems with a higher volume of water because water is not very good either. If you increase the amount of water, glyphosate is impacted. With DMA in the market, most of the farmers use the potassium product because it's cheaper. It is important to bear in mind that it is used in a specific moment over the growing period. If there is some remainder of both things, don't use Enlist in the fallow because you will miss it in the post-emergence. With the DMA, there's no problem with the volumes that we usually use. One more comment. The complexity of resistant problems we saw today, 20 years ago, we talked on the phone. That was remotely. We made only one rate. There are some herbicides that have specific curves that have been created 20 or 27 years ago. They respond the performance up to the maximum above 75 liters. And herbicides such as glufosinate that we are adopting because of its resistance property are products that require more volume. So I say that happiness is not always complete. Technologists offer solutions on weeds, but we need to adapt ourselves and look for balanced situations in order to find the best performance and to manage the rate. Sometimes we have that memory, that old memory, that we need to adjust it to a specific amount of water, but we have to change our mindset. Thank you, Rafa and Nico, for your time. You can continue asking questions to them. I will be at Corteva's booth, so I will be glad to